everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. We're going to cover everything. We're going to cut through all the propaganda, give it to you straight from left, right, and center. The opinions are what counts. Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. Happy Saturday post-debate. I am really happy to introduce our guest to you, Dr. Steve Turley, the Patriot Professor. Steve, welcome to Schaftlein Report on a Saturday. Oh, my goodness. Do we have some things to talk about? The fallout from Thursday night, it has not stopped from the minute that debate started. Dr. Steve, I'm going to start with you. You've been on the air the past couple days with your listeners, your viewers. This was a horror show, and you could see this train wreck coming from a mile away. What's your impression of Thursday night, and most importantly, listeners?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Mark. This is wonderful, and this is, obviously, this is a very exciting weekend because we finally now it's like literally the mask has been unveiled for everyone to see what we've been seeing for the last 3.5 years. I think the New York Post actually nailed it with their headline this morning. Joe Biden ended his presidency on Thursday night. Joe Biden ended his presidency, plain and simple. I think that's the absolute key. For all practical purposes, Thursday night was the end of Biden's presidency. And what we have to understand is what happened on Thursday night is that tens of millions of voters who have not been engaged in the campaign as of yet, they're not nerds like you and me, where we're looking at the polls and we're looking at the nuances of the politics. They're living their best lives. They're trying to get on, and God bless them. I wish I could do that. I wish my imagination wasn't so captured by politics half the time. But they haven't been following this. Thursday night was the first time they actively engaged in this campaign. Tens of millions. And what they saw utterly shocked them. I mean, again, you have to remember, if they are checking in on what's going on in the world, it's just a quick headline search. They look at the legacy media, and what's the legacy media been telling them for the last 3.5 years? Right? Everything's hunky-dory. Everything's fine. Yeah, the economy's stumbling a bit, but don't worry. The adults are back in charge. And they sat there aghast that this guy is in office. They couldn't even believe it. By contrast, Trump looked good. I mean, his answers were great. He kept hammering border security, economic security, cultural security, the peace abroad, possibility of World War III. I mean, he was hammering these things left and right. But the pretext for all of that chaos, the chaos at the border, the chaos of the economy, chaos in Ukraine, the pretext is the cognitive unraveling of Biden, and the entire nation saw it. And there was nothing the legacy media could do to spin out of that. That, to me, was probably the most fascinating thing on Thursday night. There was simply nothing the legacy media could do to try to spin themselves out of the best they did. I forget who it was. It must have been on CNN or MSNBC. Somebody, the best they did is, well, Donald Trump had a really bad night, too, because he said a lot of lies. And you're just kind of sitting there going, okay, so when Trump has a bad night, his base is fired up. They're ready to go. They're right. And that's exactly what I've been hearing on my channel. The base is so incredibly fired up right now. Finally, the whole world, the mask got pulled off. The whole world got to see what we've been seeing for 3.5 years. So when he's having a bad day, we're talking about, man, we're going to crush it November, landslide territory. When Biden's having the same adjective, same bad day, you actually have the entire Democratic apparatus and the legacy media all together going, who are we going to replace him with? These are two fundamentally different campaigns at this point. And it was, to say it was a disaster is an insult to disasters. It doesn't even come close.
And Steve, I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree with you 100%. I mean, we were on Patriot.tv last night doing it, the debate with, we had our 7 or 8 boxes and we had the debate going on, and it literally went. It didn't take them any further than walking out on the stage and you knew it was going to be a bad night for Joe Biden. I mean, you and I talked a little bit about this in the pre-show. Look, we only have one president at a time. And I sat there last night watching that debate as an American citizen. I was embarrassed for the office. I was embarrassed for the country. And I had thoughts like, I knew they've been gaslighting us for the majority of the past year and a half. You and I knew that was taking place. The media covered everything for him, like you talked about. But when it was laid bare last night, barely 5 minutes into the debate, and you could see it, and you said, oh my God, this is going to be a long 90 minutes. And and Dr. Steve, I was sort of pissed off about it. Yeah, did I want to see Trump do great? Did I want to see Biden stumble? Sure. But that wasn't a stumble. That literally was elderly abuse last night. And I'm sitting here saying, who in the hell in that White House is letting this man go out on stage like that? Literally, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Joe Biden, but I started sitting here thinking, this is not good for our country. And the man was sitting here, and that Medicare line, I mean, when he said we finally beat Medicare after stumbling
I
through
don't
some
know.
things, I wrote down notes to that, and I'm sitting there saying, did did the rest of America just catch what I just heard? And he was trying to string sentences together, and then again, Trump, the showman, the guy who I was pleasantly surprised. People said, "Well, what do you want to see from Donald Trump before the debate?" I answered really simply: act presidential. You're up by about
Yeah.
4 points in the polls. You don't need to beat him over the head. He's going to do it himself. And to my chagrin, well, Donald Trump, I mean, he acted presidential. He was a commanding force in the room. And yet, Joe Biden, I mean, it was really bad, folks. And I didn't know it at the time, obviously, because we were doing a live show and there were commentators, on the left and the right. But you hit the key button where the media could not even save him. I mean, people from Claire McCaskill, the former Missouri senator, to New York Times columnist. I mean, I'm going to flip it back to you, but this to me, I use the term elderly abuse. I really felt that last night because, the fact is, this man was not ready to have a debate, nor will he ever be ready to have a debate. And you know what I thought, Dr. Steve, was the key question? And I actually thought CNN did a decent job last night. But
They did.
they
They
could
did.
see
And they're
what
correct.
was happening.
Yeah.
Dana Bash could see what was happening. And I can't remember which one. I think it was Dana Bash that asked the question. Well, Mr. Biden, you'll be 86 if you complete your second term. And when she said that, I'm like, man, that's it. There is no way anybody in America, anybody, the undecided sliver of 10% voters out there, there's no way they're going to swing for Biden. Again, am I going down the right path, Dr. Steve, or did you catch the same
You're,
things? And
you're so on it, and there's a couple of different layers. First and foremost, Biden had one goal there, and that was to win back the 20% of voters who voted for Biden in 2020, but who are either voting for Trump, for someone else, or not voting at all. They're sitting out. We're seeing Trump. We could talk about what I call his political sweet spot at some point here, where he is actually maximizing the amount of non-white working class voters who are supporting him more so than we've seen in, say, the last 6 decades for a Republican. Absolutely astonishing. Those are former Biden voters. They about 20%. That's what the poll's showing of his support have abandoned him. His job last night was to win them back. He did not. His one job, just like after the Her report came out, his one job there in that makeshift ad hoc press conference was to try to assuage fears about his cognitive health, and all he did was inflame those fears. It was the same thing. He didn't woo back the 20% that voted for him in 2020 that aren't voting for him now. If anything, he solidified their decision not to vote for him, and if anything else, he ended up alienating even more people. But you're saying something that I think is even deeper in terms of the institutions of our nation. Last night revealed that our legacy media has been lying to us. This is why we need Patriot TV. This is why we need independent. That revealed to tens of millions of people that they had been lying to us. Look, it's simple and it's not hard. They've been telling us for 3.5 years. Think of Joe Scarborough, right? They've been telling us for 3.5 years. Biden is sharp as a tack. He is at the top of his game. This guy, I mean, for heaven's sakes, the LA Times actually said that Biden's age is his superpower. That was a headline a few months back in the LA Times. Bloomberg said that Biden is the single best president for business that we could ever imagine. This kind of stuff. They were going. The accolades were enormous. And then what happened after the debate? Now think about it. There are plenty of incumbents who have had bad debates. Reagan's first debate with Mondale, right? Obama's first debate with Romney. There are plenty of that. And what does the media do? They say, all right, yeah, okay, yeah, you can't win them all. Shake it off. Let's get back up and let's get back to work. If they really believed that Biden was at the top of his game, sharp as a tack, he's absolutely as brightest bulb out there. If they really believe that, would they have ever reacted the way they did? Both can't be true. Either they're lying now or they're lying then.
Well, I think they've been lying to us the entire time. I think, your point, whether it's your show, whether it's Patriot.tv, or any number of conservative outlets that have been vilified by what I'll call legacy media, the Googles, the Metas, the big technology companies. I mean, that was another thing that got laid bare last night, because it was vindication as such. I mean, did Trump tell a few whoppers last night? Yeah, he told a few. But again, like we talked about this, Steve, before the debate last night, and someone said, well, what's more important, the substance or the style? My response, 80% of a debate is style, not substance. Yeah. You think most people are going to remember facts, figures, percentages? No. What they're going to recall from that debate last night was that Joe Biden, he didn't just look old. He looked really, really old. And you sat there as a citizen thinking, oh my God, this guy has his finger on the nuclear button. I mean, it was that shocking.
Cognitive health is about as substantive as you can possibly get.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I took some notes here. I mean, I wrote so many notes during the debate. These are, folks, I hate putting up notes, but these are some words that what Dr. Steve is referring to from the legacy media. These, and I'm not going to say assertive to each individual, but these are the words they used to describe the debate last night. Disaster, nightmare, high anxiety, and this is one of my favorite ones, political suicide. And then this is a Biden quote from last night. How many times did he confuse millions with billions with trillions? I'm sitting here going, we have hundreds of trillionaires in this country. Well, that was news to me last night. And then he corrected it back and forth. So not only did they try to cram him so full of just mush in his head, when he spent 7 days at Camp David, but Dr. Steve, I mean, he couldn't even get his facts straight. Here's my favorite line of the night, and then we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back and talk about will he really get out, was when Trump made a comment, I don't know what he said, and then he said, he doesn't even know what he said. I thought that was a great singer, and it was so true. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Dr. Steve and I are going to talk about, will Joe Biden actually get out of this race, as many Democrats are calling for? We'll be back in 90 seconds.
Sounds rolling, all 3 cameras, we're good.
Is there any regrets that you have in life? I should sit here and say, yeah, I got a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life and I understand the lives that were lost, I mean, I'm sitting here with you. And I can tell my story.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person.
for Donald Trump to hire.
Brilliant military career, serving 33 years. Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn, one of America's most treasured military heroes. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Go to Patriot TV, click on Store, and grab a once-in-a-lifetime chance to own a treasured piece of American history. And get your own personal download link to watch America's most talked-about movie, as well as a DVD hand-signed by General Michael Flynn. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store. Incredible savings and a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
And we're back. So, Dr. Steve, I wanted to give you two more quotes on this that we literally ran out of time for them. But Tom Friedman, that esteemed column, no fan of Trump's whatsoever. Biden must bow out of the race. Enough is enough. And some of the old Obama accolades, DEFCON 1, pure panic. Again, they're spot on. And until that debate, we never, ever would have heard any of these comments. Now, Dr. Steve, the key question which I want to ask you is, you've got media pundits urging Biden to get out of the race. You have Democratic operatives urging Biden to get out of the race. Hakeem Jeffries came out on Friday morning and said, no, Joe Biden's going to stay in the race. Chuck Schumer has been just silent, not a word coming out of Schumer. The key question I have for you, Dr. Steve, is with the media, and folks, this is left-wing media. This is not conservative media I've been quoting here. And these are Democratic unnamed politicians. Some of them actually are named. They're going on the record. But Dr. Steve, will Joe Biden listen to any of this? And will he stay or will he go?
A little Clash music there, right? Yeah. The AP had a great piece out Friday morning that talked about that really just poured cold water on the Democrats' attempts to get rid of Biden. It is going to be dramatically difficult to do, even on the best circumstances, even if Biden himself bowed out of the race, because legally speaking, the delegates that Biden won during the primaries are bound to Biden. The primaries are over, right? And Biden won those delegates. Every state held their presidential primary, and Democrat rules, DNC rules mandate, not that they care, but that mandate that delegates Biden won remain bound to support him at the party's upcoming national convention unless he tells them he's leaving the race. Now, you have individual state laws, if I recall, Wisconsin, that says that they will not recognize any other candidate once they are official outside of death. So, I mean, this is serious stuff. If you're going to put your candidate on that ballot, that's it. We're done. You don't, no shenanigans in the 11th hour kind of thing. Now, what if Biden does drop out? All the indications right now is he's not. Lady Macbeth, Jill Biden said he's going to keep going. One of his spokespersons said he's not dropping out. We have to understand, if Biden is out, so is all his entire Biden team. They're gone. They're gone from their positions of power. They're not going to give him up that quickly either. So, but what happens if he does? Well, he can't. It's not Kamala that just automatically replaces him. The vice president is Biden's running mate, no question. But that doesn't mean they can just swap her in for himself, because she was not on the ticket during the primaries. Biden cannot decree unilaterally that she replaces him should he decide to leave the race. So we've got a bit of a mess here. We've got delegates that are legally bound to Biden. We got Biden leaving the race, and then he cannot appoint a successor, which then means, thirdly, that the moment Biden abandons this campaign, you have a whole flock of buzzards flying in to fill, to cover his carcass and fill that power vacuum. So we got Gavin Newsom, We got Gretchen Whitmer in my backyard. We got Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. You got Bernie Sanders. You got Elizabeth Warren. You got Amy Klobuchar. You got Pete Buttigieg. You got and all of their influence circles that are all going to clash to try to get that power nod. And in the process, I think you to call this a contested convention is an understatement. I think they would make an even greater mess of an already messy situation. So this is a disaster in every conceivable way. So that's a long way of not answering your question. You'll notice I'd be a good politician. I think I have no idea what's going to happen in the end, but let's just put it this way: there ain't a good choice right now. They're either going with a colossal disaster, who was polling way behind his challenger prior to the debate. They either go with him and suffer the down ticket losses that come with that, or they risk seeing their party completely fracture, and that would be a disaster beyond anything. So I frankly think they're gonna just throw their lot in with him. He actually polls higher than anyone else. Newsom is considered too slimy. He wouldn't win any state in the Midwest, for example. Kamala Harris, of course, everyone knows is a disaster. So I think, ironically, he's their best choice.
Well, Dr. Steve, that's sort of like when Dana Bash and Jake Tapper were asking the questions about like childcare last night, and everybody gave the answers they wanted to give. I'm going to give you a lot of credit for that. Let me answer my own question. And I mean, I'm sort of in your camp, Dr. Steve. I do not believe that Joe Biden's going to drop out of this race. Thought about it over the night, listened to all the commentary. There's only two people, maybe three, that can convince Joe Biden to step out of this race. His wife, Jill Biden, his sister, and Ron Klain, his former chief of staff, who've been with him, through all the political battles. Think about this for a minute, folks. Again, when you're Joe Biden and you've never lost an election, whether we agree or disagree with the man's policies, yeah, he ran for president twice and didn't win. But actually, when he was on the ballot, okay, he is undefeated. Okay, and we can grapple about it all we want. Second thing, Dr. Steve, he had the disastrous debate performance on Thursday night, and then lo and behold, his campaign held a rally in North Carolina yesterday on Friday, and Jill Biden introduced him. I didn't hear anything in that rally that sounded like Joe Biden was going to step aside. So, and as you correctly pointed out to our viewers and listeners, an elaborate process that would have to go through, A, to have him release his delegates, and then B, the food fight at the convention. I'm sort of, I think indirectly you were sort of thinking he wasn't going to step aside, and I'll go out on a limb. I don't think he will. Now, do I think that's the right thing for the country? No, I don't. Because, look, it's one thing when if I go back to previous elections, and I can go all the way back to 1976, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, I can go all the way through them. This is really the first time since I've been voting where I would be really, really concerned if Joe Biden was reelected president, because it would show me that we as a country, we didn't learn anything. I mean, the man literally last night is cognitively impaired, and that is being generous by it. And if he is so stubborn to believe that he is above what's good for the country, then my goodness, Dr. Steve, I think that's a real, real problem. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No, I think he will be the nominee, and I think Donald Trump's going to win. And frankly, we still haven't seen good polling that came out. We're going to talk a little bit about what the polling was heading into Thursday night's debate. But I'm sort of in that camp where, names are being thrown around. Politicians, generally nameless, run. But unless Joe Biden, his sister, or Ron Klain step up and say, Joe, it's time to go, Dr. Steve, I don't think he's going anywhere. Am I sort of on the proverbial ledge? Or?
Yeah. No, I'm with you 1,000%. Again, I don't think people don't generally speaking, don't voluntarily give up power. And again, it's not just Biden who would be giving up the power. It'd be the entire Biden team, the entire Biden White House. There may be obviously crossover with the next Democratic administration, were there to be one, but there's no guarantee for that, obviously. I guess they could all get cushy jobs on MSNBC and CNN and do commentary from there. But no, I think you're absolutely correct. Biden, they are stuck with Biden. I mean, at least Lyndon Baines Johnson got out, if I recall, I think it was March.
Into March.
Yeah, so there you go. You remember March of '68, he was out, and that gave him plenty of time. We're 130 days from November 5th. This is, and again, if you go all the way back, I mean, there are deadlines in terms of entering the name for various states' ballots and so forth. I think that's like in a week. Once those names are entered, it's basically done. It's a done deal. You don't get to unwrap. And and it just, what drives me crazy, JD Vance said this the other night. What drives me crazy is, if you think about it, these Democrat officials basically rigged the primaries to force Biden on us. They basically kicked out RFK. They kicked out any viable alternative to Biden, because they knew that if he had a major challenge during the primaries, that would kill him in the general. So they got rid of RFK. They put South Carolina in front of New Hampshire, so he doesn't get embarrassed again like he did in 2020 when he came in 5th in New Hampshire. And so they rigged the whole thing to force Biden on us. And then after that Thursday night debate, what do? They unilaterally go, so, okay, now we got to get rid of him. I mean, it's almost monster-like. It's absolutely crazy.
Well, I'm going to take a little clue about what you said, and we're going to come back to the polling and some other issues. But when you talked about they decided to get rid of you, Dr. Steve, you had a recent experience that, and I'm not trying to equate you to Joe Biden by any stretch of the imagination, because I respect you 1,000 times more. But I mean, you recently had an experience with big tech where, you're a conservative voice, you had a platform. Share with our audience, okay, and the reason I'm sort of tying this together, everybody's coming down on Joe Biden like a ton of bricks right now. He is adept at understanding media cycles, and so is Ron Klain. But Dr. Steve, you had big tech come down on you like a ton of bricks, and you had to sort of change your modus of operation. Share with the viewers what actually happened to you, because I'm bringing this up. As conservative voices get out there and talk about what we've seen and what's going to happen, if you think big tech's not going to be, knocking at your door, you're in for a surprise. Dr. Steve, share with us what exactly happened with you.
Yeah, thank you for we got clamped down. It was back in November, actually, on Black Friday of all days. We got an email from Google and YouTube telling us that our channel had been totally demonetized. I mean, it just came out of nowhere. And we're talking total demonetization, no ad revenue, no super chats for our live streams, nothing. And the gist of the complaint at the time is that we were uploading news clips from around the world, but without the requisite unique commentary on our part to justify that uploading. All right, fine. In fairness, you got us on some kind of technicality, no problem. We said, well, we'll be happy to take those videos down. And they said, well, that's great, but you're demonetized for the next 3 months. So, all right, we're demonetized for 3 months. 3 months pass. We get rid of all the videos. We reapply for monetization, and we get an email that says, thanks, we'll consider your request for monetization. We'll get back to you in a month. So thanks for doing everything you're supposed to do. Here's another month of demonetization. And then literally to the day, a month later, they got back to us and they told us that our channel had once again been rejected for monetization, but this time because we post what they called, quote, harmful content. And they define harmful content as content that focuses on controversial issues that's harmful to their viewers. So they moved the goalposts here. So fortunately, thank God, we have lots of wonderful sponsors and so forth that keep us afloat. But we use that as an opportunity to actually build our own ARC, we like to call it, build our own app, a free app that people can download Can I give them the address where they can get
Yeah,
it?
100%.
Yeah. Fight.turleytalks.com. That's fight, my last name, Turley, talks.com. And they can download the app completely free, watch all my videos on there. And that way we never, ever lose touch with each other because we bypass the big tech overlords, as it were. So we're just learning to adapt to, yeah, like you're saying, just these obviously fixed and rigged rules. I'm sure if we were left wing, like the Young Turks or something, they're fully monetized. I see commercials running on their channels all the time. I guess that's what's sauce for the goose is not sauce for the gander in that case.
Well, it's interesting you brought up Young Turks because one of the founders of that site, Sink Uger or something like that is his name. Even he on Friday is calling for Joe Biden to step aside out of the race. And again, we're not, listen, the purpose of this isn't to just pound Joe Biden. You saw enough elder abuse last night. But I think the point we're really trying to focus on here is trust your own eyes. Okay, whether you stay with legacy media or conservative media, don't let them tell you what your own eyes have seen last night. And Dr. Steve, we'll get into the piece about polling and where the election stands and Trump's VP and all that when we come back from break. But folks, believe with your own eyes what you saw last night and what you heard. We'll be back in 90 seconds, and we're going to talk about Trump VP and where this race stands.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold.
Call Kirk Elliott, PhD at 877-547-5743. That's 877-KIRK-PhD.
I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold-free, it is pesticide-free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. This is actually organic, mold-free, certified. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee, it's cultural. And so we tried to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Make the healthy choice for you and your family. Try mold-free, pesticide-free, and it's organic. Delicious Kingdom Cup coffee. And it's available now at the Patriot TV store. Go to patriot.tv and click on store. You'll find Kingdom Cup coffee in the health and wellness section. Order Kingdom Cup coffee at the Patriot TV store now.
And we're back with Dr. Steve. Dr. Steve, let me ask you this. Going into that debate on Thursday night, Donald Trump got some very good poll numbers. And if you're a Democrat, it was very disturbing numbers because it came from three different well-respected polling outfits. And on the conservative side, Trump was up 2, more liberal side up 6, and the other one he was up 4. So between three polls, it was averaging a +4, and he was up in the three key swing states of Pennsylvania, where you are, Michigan, Wisconsin. That Pennsylvania race, it looked like he was maybe 2.5, 3 points, and that's the furthest I've seen him up in Pennsylvania since we've been watching these polls. But so that was good news for Trump heading into the debate. And then obviously it's still too new. We haven't seen polling post-debate. But how would you assess the state of the race based on those polling numbers? And that's not even factoring in what happened on Thursday night.
On Monday, we'll get some weekend polling. Going into the debate, I mean, there's just no way around it. Trump was approaching landslide territory. There's just no way around that. Like you said, he's winning every single swing state, including the so-called blue wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. He's up. The single most respected pollster out there is the Des Moines Register. They tend to poll Iowa within the margin of error every single election. They're absolutely wonderful. They have Trump up 18 in Iowa.
I saw that.
18. Now, we know he's going to win Iowa. Iowa's one of the states that flipped, right? They voted Dukakis in '88. They used to be a reliable blue state, old school Democrat, a blue collar Democrat. Now they're fully MAGA. But he won Iowa both in 2016 and 2020 by 6, 7, 8 points. 18. But if Trump is up 18 in Iowa, there is no way he loses. There is no conceivable universe that he loses Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, because they tend to vote as a block. There are some exceptions. 88 was an exception. It went with Dukakis. Iowa did. 2020 was an exception. It went with Trump, while the others went with Biden. Obviously, 20 was a crazy election. But regardless, generally speaking, as Iowa goes, so does Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And if Wisconsin's up 4, 5, 6, I get it. Maybe it'll go to Trump and the others will go to Biden. If Wisconsin's up 18, because of the demographic overlap, the constituency overlap between the 4 states, there's no way. But then you go to Virginia. We have poll after poll after poll showing Trump and Biden tied in Virginia. You go to Minnesota, poll after poll after poll, they're tied. There's a couple of polls that showed that Trump is up 1 or 2 in Minnesota. McLaughlin had Trump within the margin of error in Washington State, Oregon, and New Jersey. And then you have Lee Zeldin writing in the New York Post just a few days back saying, look, I've looked at the numbers. Trump can do this. He can actually win New York. And keep in mind, this was all before the debate. So
right.
This is, again, you can do some crosstabs here. If Trump is up, if he's tied with Biden in Virginia, he doesn't need to win Virginia. He is going to win Arizona. He is going to win Georgia. He's going to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, because they are +6, +7, +8 Republican in relation to Virginia. So if he's tied in Virginia, you can be sure he's going to run a route when it comes to the swing states.
Dr. Steve, let me ask you this. Again, these are polling and the numbers you talked about pre-debate. When I saw he was only down 8 points in New York, I correlated exactly what you're talking about. If you're only down 8 in New York, you're +16 in Iowa, you're effectively tied down maybe 1 in Virginia, Minnesota anywhere from tied to -2, +1. I'm saying, if Virginia and Minnesota are in play and he's only down 8 in New York, I Paul Schmuwal. He's going to win. If he wins Pennsylvania, where you are, this race is over. He will become 47th president. Let me ask you, Dr. Steve, what is the thing that is appealing why Trump is leading right now? Because they literally, folks, have thrown the kitchen sink at the man. State indictment. They're trying to federal indictment. A state conviction. Just he lies. He's this. And again, we're talking pre-debate now. Trump was ahead in these numbers, and you're right. We may be Monday, Tuesday, see some weekend polling results. What's the appeal, Dr. Steve? Why is Trump doing so well and Biden so poorly?
It is incredibly ironic because I think a lot of it does have to do with a backlash to the weaponized legalism, the lawfare they've been using. Trump has hit a political sweet spot. He's maximized the rural white vote for himself like he did in 2016 and 2020, all the while minimizing the urban non-white vote for Biden. That's the political sweet spot he's in. So, I think it's the key to why Biden is consistently behind in the polls. So Trump is galvanizing the rural white vote like he did in 2016 and 2020. We have to remember that there were nearly 200 counties in Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania that had voted for every single Democratic presidential candidate since the 1980s that suddenly swung over in 16 and voted for Trump, some by 20-point margins. It was saying that's how the blue wall fell. It took Hillary totally by surprise. And she, even if she had gotten Barack Obama's level of the black vote in 2008, she still would have lost because she lost the white working class vote so badly. So Trump has maximized the white working class vote for himself, the rural vote for himself, all the while now in 2024, this is what's unique about this, he is minimizing the non-white urban vote for Biden. He is getting record number Black and Latino support. And then when you ask why, it's because rural whites and urban non-white working class are the ones who feel most victimized by a weaponized justice system. And so ironically, Trump's support is skyrocketing among a demographic precisely because of the very lawfare that the Democrats thought would result in his demise.
I agree with everything you just said, and I'll throw a couple other things on top of it. I mean, you could tell at Thursday night's debate, Donald Trump was actively going after Black and Hispanic voters. He spoke at length to those voters about things he could do for them. And while Biden's sitting here talking about January 6th and talking about, abortion, really is not on people's mind as much. Now, I don't want to minimize it, but people are not voting on January 6th. They're just not. And CNN posed the climate change question. Only a small sliver of people even think that that's a top 10 issue. So I saw Donald Trump Thursday night trying to connect with Hispanic and Black voters. And I think this, Dr. Steve, since Joe Biden has been president, inflation is running 20%. I'm not talking just running 20% now, but cumulatively, prices are 20% higher than they were when Joe Biden became president. And a lot of people are thinking, well, when are these prices going to come down? Well, the dirty little secret is they're not coming down. There's no way prices can come down when you have a government that has expanded the way this one has. Right now, and I'm not trying to throw a lot of statistics at you, but the amount of government spending relative to the whole economy, it's higher now than at any time outside of, I think, when we were in World War II. So people are seeing this, and their paychecks have not kept up with inflation. So a lot of people, I think this is the case, Dr. Steve, where they may not like Trump personally, and he may set them off. But one thing that they recognize, and it's the old Ronald Reagan question. I think somebody brought it up last night. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Well, a lot of African American men and a lot of Hispanics, men and women, are saying, no, 4 years ago. As a matter of fact, I'm worse off. And Donald Trump is making an effort to connect. I mean, I saw him go to Philadelphia. When his trial was going on, he was going around New York City. This man, and he went to Philadelphia recently, and he was holding rallies at
University.
Yep. That's, sort of your neck of the wood in Pennsylvania. What did you see in those rallies about why Trump is connecting with people? Is it the policies? Is it the personality? And is it just that Joe Biden's just too damn old?
Yes, and yes. I think it's a perfect storm. It really is. Byron York of the Washington Examiner, I think, said it best, and he's no fan of Trump, which is really interesting. But he just came out and said Trump, in the end, has the easiest campaign pitch of any presidential campaign. Number one, things were great when I was president. Number two, Joe Biden came in and screwed everything up. Number three, vote for me and I'll make things great again. That's Trump's whole pitch when all's said and done. When I was president, you even saw that brilliant answer on J6. On J6, our borders were secure. We were energy independent. We were celebrating our cultures and customs, not derogating them and mocking them and ridiculing them as racist and bigoted, all kinds of phobic and all that. When I was president, we had peace abroad and prosperity at home. Biden came in, and all we've had are wars abroad and depression at home. Vote for me, and I will make America great again. And it resonates with everyone. That's the beauty of sort of the nationalist populist paradigm. It sees the nation as a whole as a race. And you notice that there, kind of like a meta race, as it were. So he still talks about things like discrimination. but he talks about discrimination in terms of economic discrimination. Look, you open up those borders, then all of those entry-level jobs in the urban areas, they're gone. They're all going to go to these illegal immigrants getting paid under the table $2 an hour, and you're shot. You don't get employed. He talks about disenfranchisement, but more again political or economic disenfranchisement. That these elites are making decisions that don't have your best interests. It's actually their best interests in mind to maximize their margins and their bottom line. So they're putting you out in the cold. He has this very powerful way of saying, dude, if you're an American, if you are an American citizen, I am your best friend. I will guard you. I will guard the border. I will guard our economy. I'll guard our energy independence, and I'll guard the customs and cultures and traditions that we love. That is drawing Latinos and Blacks to his message more than anything that's barely coming out of Biden's mouth.
Well, I'm glad you touched on the border, because in most polling, Dr. Steve, of what are the critical issues that are people concerned about, border security ranks, right to second behind the economy. I thought that the Thursday night spot on. I mean, he even led Biden into it to where he talked about, hey, I had policies that were working. We had illegal immigration slowed to a crawl, and you reversed every one of my policies. And then when he started talking about people who have been killed, Americans who were crossing the border, Biden even got confused and started telling the story of the young 12-year-old girl in Houston that was murdered by 2 illegal immigrants. And then he got all that was the part where he got all kind of confused and started gibberish. And that's the piece where Trump said, I don't even think he knows what he's talking about here. But people can relate to that when they see, 10 million people coming across the border illegally. And those people are taking jobs that might otherwise go to a different subset. Boy, that's another piece that's just going to drive them crazy. All right, we're going to take a quick break here for our final break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk who the vice president would be, and we're going to talk about something called a post-normal period. Be back in 90 seconds.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold.
Call Kirk Elliott, PhD at 877-547-5743. That's 877-KIRK-PhD.
Looking to give your wardrobe an upgrade? Well, look no further. Here at God Country & Kin, we've got you covered from head to toe, from shoulder to shoulder, and everything in between. Introducing our brand new Patriotic Collection, designed to display your patriotic spirit with a stylish look that's sure to turn heads. And the best part is, you don't have to break the bank to be your best you. Why wait? Visit us online or in-store today and elevate your style with God Country & Kin. God Country & Kin, where patriotism meets style. Shop now. Visit the Patriot TV store and look for the God Country Kin banner to find the perfect outfit, shirt, accessory, or maybe a great hat.
You can totally see yourself rocking this hat. I know you can. And check out all the great stuff we've got to show your patriotism at patriot.tv.store. Click that link above that says store and join me there at the Patriot TV store.
And we're back, folks. All right, so look, there were a lot of people, commentators, particularly on the right, that thought, well, Trump may outstage Biden and he'll declare who his vice president was going to be at the debate. That didn't happen, but all the, quote, names were in Atlanta last night. So, Dr. Steve, let me turn to you. We asked this question on Patriot TV last night, and we got some of the traditional names, the Marco Rubios, the Tulsi Gabbards, Byron Donald, the congressman from Florida, Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, and a handful of others. And the opinions across the 7 boxes on Patriot TV last night were very diverse. there was virtually no agreement on anything. So these are opinions. We don't know. Trump says he's made up his mind. I'll give it to him that he probably has. How would you rate the top 1, 2, or maybe 3 choices for VP? And who would you like to see Trump's running mate and why?
It's a great question, and I mean the very fact that he has us doing this kind of VP bingo is it just shows again how brilliant he is to entice us, to draw us, and to engage us in this process. Well, I think the basic philosophy I think that that Trump has to employ in choosing a VP is whoever it is, they've got to be in effect more radical than he is, in a sense. In other words, the powers that be, the establishment, Washington, the deep state, they have to be more worried about his VP than they are about him. Otherwise, he's not going to make it out of his inauguration without them impeaching him a third time. So that's what makes me nervous with a Rubio, to be honest with you. Maybe Burgum. I just don't know enough about Burgum. But for me, Rubio and certainly Tim Scott are just way too comfortable with establishment Republicans. They have betrayed their base in the past. Tim Scott, I think is the worst of it. But then, so who are the more kind of radical ones, or the super MAGA ones? Well, certainly J.D. Vance. He came in, I think, at the latest, or was it Turning Point? I think Turning TPUSA conference. I think he came in number 1 at 40% or something like that. But I do like having him in the Senate, to be honest with you. So, but he would be an amazing VP. Ben Carson, I'm a graduate from Johns Hopkins University, and he was there in the medical school, and I was there. I mean, he's a great man. He's a little quiet. He's a little uncharismatic, but I think the deep state would be very much afraid of him. Vivek, I mean, what do you say? Vivek is youth, energy. He's got a brain trust beyond our wildest dreams. He would be very impressive. I love Youngkin, and I love Donalds as well. So those would be, to me, it would be coming down to Vance, Ramaswamy, definitely Youngkin, and then possibly kind of a Carson Donalds. Any one of those would be a home run.
Yeah, I concur with you, and I don't think any of your suggestions. I think every one of them is a good suggestion, and I think we've got such a deep bench, and that's really what it is. I literally would feel comfortable with any of the names that you threw out there. I've had a chance to meet Vivek Ramaswamy down at Mar-a-Lago a couple times. Sharp as a tack. I mean, Donald's had a chance to meet him before. Great guy. Obviously, Marco Rubio, quite familiar with him. He's my home state senator. Listen, Trump threw out Tim Scott, accolades to him during the debate on Thursday night. So, you know what? I'm confident of this, that whoever Trump selects as his VP, I think he's going to have Trump's back, and I think it'll be a little bit different president-vice president relationship than maybe he had with Mike Pence. So that I'm looking forward to. And you are right. I mean, depending upon how the Senate goes and how the House goes, if Trump wins this race in a blowout, he's likely to have some coattails. But right now, literally, I could flip a coin in the House because it could go either way. The Senate, the map is favorable to Republicans. But honestly, Dr. Steve, the polls I've seen show people voting for Trump, but they're still voting for their Democratic senators. That's a head scratcher. And folks, the reason I say it's a head scratcher, unlike our side, which whether it's conservative media or conservative politicians, we tend to fight each other. Okay. The Democrats don't. They fall in line. So I'll give you a perfect example. It doesn't matter if you're Bernie Sanders on the far left, or I'll take a Senator John Tester who's just center left. Don Chester from Montana. Did you ever think you'd see a Democratic senator from Montana get reelected? I didn't, but he did. So we have this dynamic out there, Dr. Steve, where Trump is leading at this House and Senate could go either way. I mean, what am I missing here? Because, boy, if Trump wins and he doesn't have the House and Senate, it's going to be challenge. But if he does have either or both, then I think life gets a lot better for us.
Yeah, the way, in my opinion, the way to think of it is Trump is a third-party candidate that won a major party nomination. He's not a Republican. He's not seen as a traditional Republican. In the UK, they kind of went through the same thing with Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson ended up presenting himself as sort of a non-Tory Tory. And then what that did is it enabled Labor, so their Democrat voters, to feel comfortable voting for him and his new Tory party. They ended up betraying their voters, unfortunately, but in a way that they would never have imagined they could have done before. And what Trump has been able to do is he's been able to de-align so many of these voters, like we talked about, these rural working class voters, particularly white working class voters who had voted Democrat every single election. We're talking Dukakis, you name it. He was able to convince them to come on over and vote for him because they saw him now as the champion of the working class. They don't see that of the Republicans. They don't see that of Mike Johnson or Mitch McConnell, especially when they're sending all their money over to Ukraine to fight a fruitless war. So I think in many respects, the discrepancy or the dichotomy between Trump, the political dichotomy between Trump and Republicans is still very, very much there. And so what part of the campaign is going to be is to try to bridge that gap so that the discrepancy between the support for Trump and the support down ticket ends up getting resolved.
Let me ask you one other thing, Dr. Steve. We teased this right before we come out of break about a post-normal period. I know you've talked about that on some of your shows, and I would characterize it like this, folks. When things just don't seem right and virtually everything around you, you're saying, that's not the way it used to be. Things that we thought would never happen are happening, and stuff that we thought, well, this could never happen, it is happening. Dr. Steve, you talked about this. Can you share with our audience exactly what you meant by this phrase, post-normal period?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing it up. This is where like social theory nerds kind of geek out here. But yeah, the reason, and you set that up perfectly, Mark, the reason things appear so abnormal and so strange and so odd and so crazy and insane today is because they are. And that is the thesis of a British Pakistani scholar by the name of Zayuddin Sardar, Sardar, Zayuddin Sardar. And he basically and he's not alone. A number of scholars follow his lead, but they basically argue that we're living in a time called post-normal times, which refers to this intermediate period, an interim period in which an old era has come to an end or is coming to an end, and a new era has yet to establish itself. So it's a period of time between a no longer but a not yet. And so nothing really makes sense in this world anymore. That which made sense in the old era doesn't necessarily transfer over into the current era. Now, the good news to that is what's that old era that he thinks has just fallen and is imploding? It's the liberal globalist world. He believes that liberal, globalist, secular world really is dying, and he's not alone. A number of people believe it. Now, it still lives on in what's called a post-normal lag. That post-normal lag are the institutions that are still in place that still enforce that old era, but nobody really believes in it anymore. Even those who are going to vote for Biden, even those who are going to vote for they're cynical. They're going to vote for Biden because they just hate Trump. They hate the new world that's going to rise, and they don't want that. What is that new world? Where they're increasingly calling it civilizational populism. And it's precisely what we're seeing in the MAGA movement and Trump and Giorgia Meloni in Italy and Geert Wilders in the Netherlands and Nigel Farage in the UK and the AfD in Germany and Viktor Orban in Hungary. So at the BJP party in India. The world is just it's going away from these old globalist structures, this one size fits all political and economic administrative system that basically centralized government power, political power in the hands of a very few elite. That's all breaking apart now. It's not making a lot of sense because we're in the shrapnel period, but it seems to be going and rearranging itself to a much more nationalist, populist, and traditionalist world. So we're in a crazy period right now, but that just means the future is going to be pretty bright.
Well, I got to tell you, folks, this has been an absolute pleasure, Dr. Steve, having you on my show. I hope you'll come back. I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion. And as the voting starts, folks, and it's not that far away, we'll get back and we'll give you full analysis. Thank you again, Dr. Steve, for coming on my show. That's it for the Saturday show. We'll be back tomorrow. See you on Sunday. Have a great rest of your weekend.